And this morning today I've got two guests. First time that we're doing two guests. I've got Sabrina Handke, who's partner at Hogan Lovellsand in Munich, and I've got Erik Steger, partner Wolf Theiss in Vienna, both lawyers. We'll talk about that aspect a little bit later, but how do you handle home office? Is that your home, Sabrina?
Actually, today I'm in the office because I thought it's maybe easier with the connection for our interview. And I'm always in the office doing webinars and stuff like that. But luckily, home office is rather easy for us because we are very used to work from everywhere, and our systems were already running before Corona. And we were rather equipped at home. And my husband, he's lawyer as well. So sometimes it's like we're arguing a bit who's getting the workplace with the two monitors. But I think that's our major issue at the moment. Otherwise, it's working out very, very well. And I have to thank our IT because they are really doing a perfect job. Everything's working very, very well.
And Erik is busy with another call.
Right. It was my daughter. It was my daughter calling me actually, which is the best moment when she could do that, but which tells you that I'm not at home and as well in the office, because with the wisdom that the politicians have, they have excused not only hospitals and emergency workers and supermarkets, but also lawyers are allowed to continue to work in their offices. So we could, but as a matter of self-discipline, most of us work from home. I usually do as well, with the tricky thing that the kids who are working from home as well now give me a second job, not of my choosing, but I teach them now in English, German, Latin, whatever they come up with, hopefully for a short moment and not in the midst of a call like this one.
Well, we're all forced to multitask wherever we are, whether we're in the office quickly to sneak out or whether in the home office. What do you do what do you do when you're now locked up or semi-locked up in your case? What do you do to keep sane? Is there a routine that you change? Is there something that you say, now I want to start playing guitar? Like a friend of mine said he's going to use this time to learn guitar.
Actually, very funny. We started bicycling just 1 week before all the Corona lockdown situation started, and we bought new racing bikes, my husband and I. And so this is the perfect time to work that out, because that's still allowed in Germany to do outdoor sports, including bicycling. And so we're cycling a lot. So in the weekend, we sometimes even do it in the lunch break. It's a very good situation at the moment to cycle. I mean, the streets are very empty. It's perfect to go out and ride your bicycle.
Lucky you. Erik?
Well, first of all, I realized, but only after a week, that the most important thing to keep everybody reasonably happy is to have a fixed routine every day, so that you don't let go. You have breakfast at a normal time, you dress, you do everything as if it were normal. And then fortunately, because our flat is large enough, we all can go into more or less separate rooms and do whatever we want to do. I must say that it must be much more difficult and challenging for people who live in a much narrower space and don't have their own corners where they can go to. So for these people, it must be an ordeal, really.
Yeah, I think many of us can consider ourselves lucky. Same here, even though, as I mentioned before, we're in South Africa, we're locked in, we're not allowed to jog, we're not allowed to cycle, and I'm not starting to play the guitar either. But you're right with the routine. I think that's what you need to keep saying. Now, Erik, you mentioned that in Austria, lawyers are enjoying right now in these times more freedom of movement. What are you busy with these days? I mean, in our industry, hospitality, probably one of the most hardest hit. What is it that is happening right now?
Well, it first started with a very simple question, whether rent has to be paid on or not, whether you can reduce rent or stop paying rent overall. That was the very first question, with politicians first trying to take a side, but then realizing that whatever side they would put themselves on would push the other side over the cliff. And so they said, well, there must be enough in the law to solve this question and just move on. By now, these questions continue to persist, and we have many, many questions. What is force majeure really? What does all that mean? But now we have in our industry, we have the big travel agencies canceling their reservations, where, you know, hotels would give 50%, 70% to one tour operator or two, especially in the leisure industry. And now suddenly they cancel their reservations, which means that an expected income flow for summer, for example, is now at risk, and they don't know whether they will survive that. Second question is our business interruption insurance covering the loss? And if so, does it cover the loss for the operator, or does it cover the loss for the building owner, who is now better off? Because if the building owner doesn't get the money, and here's the next one asking questions, what will the bank say? Will the bank stay still? Will it accept a moratorium, whatever? So we're running in circles here with a very fast-moving legislature. We now stand since Sunday at the fifth COVID law here in Austria, and every single one of them had an impact on the leisure industry, and you did not really know what that means or not. So we have our clients calling in while the meeting in the parliament is going on and saying, well, what does that mean for me?
Right. So a lot of uncertainty there. In Munich, you're based in Munich, sort of looking after more German focus. Very similar?
Yes, I think it's very similar. So the questions are literally the same. I think what we see here, and what I quite like about the industry sector of hotels, is that compared to what I hear from my colleagues dealing with leisure industry, not leisure, with supermarkets, with shops, shopping centers, stuff like that, the parties continue to work together. So landlords and operators are talking, and they try to find solutions, because both know about the situation of the others. Obviously, operators don't have income, so there is no money to pay the rent. On the other side, the operators are very well aware that the landlords have loans which they have to pay. So for them, it's also difficult if they just don't get money from all of their tenants at the same time. And so that is what we are currently dealing with. We're doing a lot of amendments to the lease agreements to agree on deferral of rent payments, on payback particularities. And so that is what we're doing quite a lot. We also have a COVID legislation, which just prohibits landlords from terminating the lease due to a non-payment of rent between April and June. But currently, arguments are going on very much that this is not sufficient, because it does not say anything about landlords and their loans. It does not cover the question on, does the rent really have to be paid, or does it just say there is no termination? And so the parties involved in here, the lawyers and all the industry sector groups, they're just asking for new legislation for amendments of the existing law to get quite more certainty in that respect.
Yeah. It's obviously a very, very complicated and very dependent on obviously on the perspective where you're looking from. Now, what do you believe will be taken out of this period and find its way into new contracts, new legislation? Once we are, let's fast forward 1 year, we look back, oh, it was horrible, but it's gone, we've got a vaccine, everything is fine. Which parts might remain in contracts, will remain in contracts? How will that, in your opinion, Erik, let's start with you, sorry. How do you think that will work out?
Well, naturally, a situation like this one will find its way in the contracts one way or the other. We do see contracts that have a force majeure clause, but that force majeure clause is not really helpful either, because first of all, the question is it a force majeure? And I've read from a German lawyer that a pandemic like this one had to be expected, because even Bill Gates mentioned it a few years back, that there could be a pandemic that could have exactly the outcome that we're seeing now. So you see, lawyers have a tendency to make the best out of everything when it comes to disputing what is the situation between contracting parties. At the end of the day, what I believe will happen is that people understand that this is a risk for which no side has responsibility. And if so, then the best way through will be to ensure that. And it appears to me that the normal business interruption insurances always have a demolition clause to the framework of the hotel as their basis, and not something else that would interrupt the business. I'm only aware of a Swiss insurance company and one Austrian who were willing to assume the disease risk in a policy. Now, of course, they discuss whether that is the case they wanted to insure in the first place, which I think is the normal reaction for each insurer, that once you believe you have an insurance, they will tell you, oh no, that's not insured under your insurance policy. But having said that, I think that insurance products will find their way into contracts, and that will do the trick.
Yeah. Sabrina, time is unfortunately against us. I had the funny feeling that we could talk for at least an hour, and maybe after that we can, after this thing is over, and then we're much the wiser than afterwards anyway, and say, well, we had known. But let's be on a positive side. What do you think will be a positive from a business, but maybe also from a societal aspect after this? Will we be better contract partners? Will we be better people?
I think it's very difficult to say whether we would be better people, but I think what is quite good with respect to the hotel and leisure industry, that this situation shows how the parties act together, and that they really act as partners and not as opposing parties, which you see in other industry sectors. And so it really stands out that you see we're in a long-term relationship with a long-term contract, and we both try to find or have to find solutions. And I think that is something which will remain in the mind of the people, where who was willing to help, and who was willing to find solutions, and who was just looking for his own perspective. And so I think for the future, Mark already said, Mark is our senior hotel partner in Frankfurt, he said, I've been through 3 or 4 crises, and we've always come out stronger than before, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be stronger after this one. And I think that is, people might change their focus and see that there are also things which are more important than doing business, acting fast, or looking after their own benefits. But people will, or in particular in this industry, will be stronger together, and will act more as one family, like they already do. But I think it's going to be even more afterwards.
Yes. Yeah. Erik, closing remark.
Well, I completely share Sabrina's view on this. It is remarkable how much they try to work together, how much owners and operators also try to be helpful to the community overall. They come up with ideas like, can we open our building to people who are hospitalized, maybe for other reasons, because we could offer them a place where they don't get infected but can still be treated for minor illnesses, that we could run a makeshift hospital here. In Austria, we have a very special situation in that there are 60,000 foreign workers taking care of the elderly who still live at home. These people presently cannot cross borders, despite the fact that our politicians would like to make them move. The other countries won't allow them without quarantining everybody for 14 days, which is an extreme burden for families, for people who don't have enough care for themselves. Now hotels start offering that as an interim quarantine place for them, because they, usually they would live in the same household with the people they care for, and things like. So it's really nice to see And also when you hear to the CEOs of Marriott, of Intercont, whatever, they, you know, after a shock, and it will be a shocking event for the balance sheets of everybody, I'm quite sure, they try to make the best out of it. And that is a very encouraging sign. I like this industry.
Yeah,
I like it too. I mean, I've done nothing else than in the last 40 years than work in this industry. So long may it last, may it recover very fast. I thank you for your time. I wish you very, very well. I wish you well in those negotiations on behalf of your clients, and may that spirit of cooperation and mediation rather than confrontation, may that continue. Thanks very much, Sabrina Handke. Thanks very much, Erik Steger, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.